Allora sta tutto bene con camera.
Let's to speak. Three little tigers.
Three little tigers, how delightful.
We have a tongue twister in Spain. That's like
Tres pequeños tigres.
actually tres tristes tigres. Tres en un trigal.
Got
Tres tristes.
three sad tigers.
Three sad tigers eat
Il camera funziona, amore.
Say it in Spanish again. So.
tres tristes tigres
Yeah.
comen trigo. No, tragan trigo en un trigal.
Are bringing something on
No,
a tray.
They're eating or swallowing. Can you met bread? Like
Trigo.
Dough.
no,
No?
the corn.
Oh, the corn, wheat.
Wheat.
Yeah.
Wheat.
It's depressing how little Spanish I speak after 5 years of Duolingo.
I want.
I know how to say el gato está en la nevera, because that's something.
Fucking Duolingo, man.
What was it? Me enseñarás a barrer el piso?
Consiga aqui.
That's the thing that I need to use. Mis padres querían que compraba una casa cerca de ellos.
Okay.
Those have been the target sentences
Awesome.
lately. Yeah.
Awesome. El elefante come un sándwich.
El elefante come un sándwich. Like, I pine for the days when it was bad, when it was present tense.
It's a test sound. Two, one.
How do we look at each other? Do we look at each
Maybe that's how we start by
Exactly.
We're like, where do we look?
Hello, welcome to the Irreverente Impro Festival podcast 2023. Today we have our guest live here in the Biblioteca de Alcántara in Lisbon. Her name is Kiki Hon.
That's right.
Exactly. Welcome.
And your name is Alfonso. Wait, you said
Got
that
it.
already. Okay.
Yes, no, I didn't say that. No, I'm the host. It doesn't matter. The important thing is and the conversation we're going to have today. Kiki,
Yes.
make for the people that don't know you
Yeah.
in the podcast, make us a little introduction about you,
Yeah.
who you are.
So my name is Kiki. I am a half Dutch, half Australian improviser. I live in Amsterdam with my cat Percy and my partner Kevin, who moved from Texas a couple of years ago to be there. I'm a psychologist. I don't know if I said that, but I'm very nervous. So I'm going to get the babbling out of the way here. So all good. Oh yeah. A word from our sponsor. This is the Irreverente bottle. Can't recommend it enough. Yeah. So I've been improvising for 19 years now. I started out at a theater in Amsterdam called Boom Chicago, and I've been a psychologist for longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work as a therapist, but I work teaching doctors communication skills, leadership skills, self-care skills.
All right. The topic of today is mental health and improv.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that we can have you here for that.
I'm very happy to be.
Let's dive straight into it.
Yeah, sure.
You said that you train doctors in communication skills and what other skills?
Leadership skills.
Uh-huh.
And so this is the unofficial part, but self-care skills. So
Oh.
basically my job at the hospital is multifaceted. So I teach communication skills. So like what we do is, it's really fun. We get the doctors to make little videos of their interactions with patients, and then we watch those videos and see what we can learn about the communication for it. It's really fun. And then leadership skills. So we call it professionalism, and basically just an umbrella of like, how much distance do you keep from patients? How much proximity? But also, yeah, the part that's very important to me is self-care, because the longer I've been working in healthcare, the more I see how much of an issue self-care is for doctors. Because the doctors that I teach are general practitioners or family doctors. just depending on how you call them. And it's often a subset of doctors who are very, very driven to help. Very motivated by making things better. And they have 10 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on the practice, in which time they really want to solve somebody's problem.
Yeah. And that's very little time.
It's very little time. So what you get is these people who are very driven to help other people, who are given very little time, and so they become very task oriented.
Yeah.
Just very like, tell me your problem,
Machines,
I'm going to fix it. Yeah. And these very empathetic, warm human beings forget to say, like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Are you okay? All of that.
The humanitarian part of it, no?
Exactly.
Human.
And internally, what happens to them is like, they go home at the end of the day after having heard just a lot of problems, and it can be hard. So I've sort of taken it upon myself to help teach them how to take care of themselves.
Nice. Beautiful job. Beautiful job, because you probably see the impact of the work.
Yeah.
And okay, wow. That already is amazing to hear.
Thank you.
So how much of how much improv do you apply in your job in this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it's a lot of it isn't necessarily conscious. So I think that improv has made me very good at noticing what the group that I'm teaching needs and doing that. So like basically my work gives me a curriculum, things that I'm supposed to follow, things that I'm supposed to teach them. And sometimes I'll be in front of the class and realize that what I'm trying to teach them isn't what they need to learn that day. So I've become very good at throwing their curriculum out the window and just dealing with what's happening. But also I've become the person at work who, like, when a coworker is sick last minute and somebody needs to cover for them, often they ask me, because other coworkers can get very like, oh, I need to prepare this class, and I'm not. Okay. And I think that's something that improv has given me. But I also think that there's a playfulness that comes with being an improviser. Totally. Where so I work at an academic hospital. The world of academia can be very like, is it true what you're saying? Very critical. And I'm convinced that that's not the best way to learn. Learning is best when it's fun.
Absolutely.
So I think that improv has helped me there. I think improv has helped me to come up with little exercises on the spot, or telling little anecdotes or jokes that's going to help make the course material stick better. And that being said, sometimes when there's been occasions where like what I'm trying to teach isn't working, or they're in a particular mood because of something, where I've said to them, like, get the tables and chairs out of the way. We're going to do an improv workshop. Nice. Because I believe that the lessons that improv teaches you can be of use for this or this reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's how you use improv in your normal work.
Yeah.
How did being a psychologist influence you on how you do it?
Yeah. I think being a psychologist means that you study psychology because you have an interest in how the human mind works. Okay. And then studying psychology, it teaches you a framework for how people are sort of put together. Mm-hmm. And I can use that sometimes to think of a character on stage. So just like Jill Bernard has the brilliant Vapapo to help you build characters, yes. I realized at a certain stage that things like the NEO-PI, which is like a personality test, stands for neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, and then there's another two, which is conscientiousness, and oh gosh, I'm forgetting the last one right now. Anyway, but it's when I'm trying to think of a character to play on stage, sometimes I'll just think about like, okay, let's play a character who's both highly neurotic and highly open to new experiences. And that's what's informing the character for me. And in fact, that's a workshop that I've taught at festivals. On just
creating characters through psychology.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also just like I remember like being halfway through watching Game of Thrones and realizing like, oh, I think I don't know. I haven't been in the writer's room, but I think that all of these characters have been written using personality disorders.
Oh,
Just yeah, a lot of the characters in Game of Thrones can be put into one of the
In the-
personality
in the-
disorder categories.
quite clearly in the books.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, let's speak about the influence of improv in the world of in mental health.
Yes.
Right. There's many ways we can approach this.
Yeah.
So my first question is going to be, how do you think? I mean, I think everyone that does improv, not only watch but has ever taken a workshop, can imagine, at least, if not experience themselves, how positive it can be. I approach it through the world of soft skills, because that's a bit more in my field. But how do you see it? What do you think are the main effects, psychological or in the mental health, for people that practice improv regularly?
Yeah. There's a number of them. Just the bare bones of getting out of your head, literally. And I don't think that's unique to improv. You know, everybody knows the feeling of like, you know, work is stressing you out or whatever. And you take a yoga class, for example. And if you're doing yoga, if you think about anything but your mat, you're going to fall off that mat. You know, you need like, it forces you to have this kind of meditative state where you're not thinking about work anymore. And improv, I think, has a similar thing where you know, you're doing something else and that gets you out of it. So that's one thing.
Presence.
Presence, and just doing something completely different. And a big one, I think, is being allowed to fail. Failure is being celebrated rather than something to be ashamed of. You know, a failure being something that adds to the beauty of the scene, and that's something to play with. I think that's something that's very healthy.
Is there a psychological term for the comfort in failing, or like?
If there is, I'm not thinking of it right now. You know,
maybe the ambiguity resistance.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that. Let's publish a paper. Yeah, it's learning that it's okay to fail. I think that's another thing.
Resilience.
Yes, resilience. I think a big gift that improv has given me is being okay with looking like a fool. I recently started a new job where I'm teaching soft skills and leadership skills to academics. You know, and it's a crowd that's very like, anything you say gets met with a kind of a, is that true? Is there evidence for that? And I think if I hadn't done a bunch of improv, I might find that very intimidating. And here I think, well, worst, you think I'm wrong. I remember my teacher, Rachel Miller, years ago saying, the worst thing that can happen is somebody isn't going to invite you to their birthday party if they see you do something bad on stage or whatever. And I thought, well, that's putting it into perspective. So I think that's a thing that improv, like learning to fail, learning that like no matter how poorly a scene goes, like you're not gonna die. Like it's fine.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, taking away the judgment of yourself, which trains you to take away judgments on others.
Yeah, exactly. And realizing everything's just
And if you do fail, and if you do look like fool, then you go back to the last thing of like, failing is fine.
Failing is fine. Yeah. The what's it called? The failure bow, when you know we made a mistake, and instead of saying I made a mistake, you know, we all say we made a mistake, and we all put our hands in the air again. Yeah. I think that's a very healthy attitude to have. I think a lot of people, and in my experience, particularly highly educated people, are very, very. It's very important to them to be right. Being wrong is a big problem, and I think we have a lot to learn in terms of saying like I was wrong. You know what? I changed my opinion. And I think improv can help you to
totally. I remember not long ago, trying to explain this in the workshop,
Yeah.
I ended up with the conclusion is if you fail, it means you reach the end of your capacities, of your knowledge,
Ah.
which means, hey, be happy because you went that far and now it probably extended a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
So be happy. It's
Lovely.
not that we're happy because we failed. We're
Yeah.
happy because we reached the end and we went over.
Yes.
Aha, this is where it was the end.
Yes.
We reached it and we made it bigger. So yay for that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. So we have
So yeah,
presence, resilience,
resilience, and also
letting go of judgment.
yeah, letting go of judgment, and I want to say community.
Ooh,
Nice.
nice.
I think within the first class of improv, you learn that no matter what you do, people are gonna support. I say no matter, and of course there's there's restrictions, but we'll probably get to that later. Not no matter what you do, but
Yeah.
within the realm of what is
Supportable, we will support it.
supportable, we will support it. And the I've got your back attitude. And I feel like over the years I've seen a lot of people coming to improv classes because of social anxiety, or because they've moved to a city and they don't have their people yet. And just learning a skill where you get supported by other people. And I feel like the more you get into improv, the more that got your back attitude extends to other things.
Okay,
Yes.
I agree with everything you said and I love it. But with the last point, the more you get into improv, the more is that? Is that so?
Well, maybe not the more you do, but like,
because I see that. Let me explain my point.
Yeah, sure.
I see that when people first start and they find a community, it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And that's what builds communities around schools, around groups that do improv. But I've also seen sometimes, not always, luckily not always, but sometimes, when people professionalize or they start living off that, or they start like depending on that for their income, they suddenly become like, then support is like, it has a but, which is like,
that's one of the, like, when I was preparing this podcast and organizing my thoughts, that's one of the points that I wrote down for myself. Depending on what your goal is with improv. So there's that rub at a certain stage where you're in an improv group and everything's lovely, we're all supporting each other, it's great, and then somebody wants to make it as a professional, or somebody have you seen the movie oh god, what's the improv movie with Mike Birabiglia? What's that? Don't Think Twice. Thank you very much. That's the one. And it's about pretty much that. Like it's a group in, I think, New York, and they're having a great time doing their weekly shows or whatever. And then at a certain stage, somebody is, I think, auditioning for SNL or something. I have a terrible memory from movies, but that's pretty much the gist of it. And all of a sudden, there's a rub, because now there's something at stake. So it really depends on what you're doing improv for, what is your end goal, and how much transparency is there about your end goal. So whenever jealousy and comparisonitis come into play, then that can be a problem.
And for what I've seen, not necessarily does it have to come with like, is there something at stake, or are we trying to live off this? It's also how you see competition, or how you see reality, right? To me, there's people that see the improv community or improv or whatever as a pie. So if someone has a bigger side of the pie, then I have less, and then I don't want that, right? And there's other people that see it as like, anyone who's wanting pie, they're also bringing ingredients in.
Exactly.
So then we're making the pie bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Another improv theater opening doesn't mean necessarily competition. It might mean that the world or the city is seeing that improv is a thing and thinking, oh, maybe this is somewhere where I should be spending my Friday nights or whatever.
And so far, come on, we're free. We are so small. Improv is still so small that the more the merrier.
Right? And and if your friend is given an opportunity, are you able to hold both the emotion of being happy for the friend and a little bit sad for yourself that you didn't get that opportunity, but also maybe think that the fact that your friend has been given an opportunity might mean that down the line, your friend is going to invite you
Absolutely.
to their table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how can we say with a straight face in our communities and with our students, we're building a community
Yes.
if we're not including other communities and we're not,
Yeah.
we have to be an example of,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have questions from the audience.
Yeah.
So Luana is saying that there is the idea in the back of our minds of punishment to mistakes. How could we help change that with improv?
Yeah. I think literally by giving people the experience that mistakes are okay, celebrating the mistake. Because sometimes when mistakes happen on stage, we call them out in a way that makes the person look a little bit bad. We sort of comment on it, and I've been guilty of this too. It can be a very funny thing to do. But if we respond to it with genuine delight and genuinely working it into the show, and eye contact is key, isn't it? Like checking in with the person. I'm aware that I just moved the table.
Yeah.
So checking in with the person, like, is this fun for you? Is it fun for you that we're playing with this mistake? In the moment
and after
and
before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like how is that for the person? And
it's funny because to me, I've been there.
Yeah.
And I've been there with a group where I didn't feel confident. To me, that thing of commenting is quite typical of comedy improv.
Yeah.
Not so much of theater improv, because in a story, the character wouldn't necessarily make fun of something like that's meta, and meta doesn't have so much space in theater improv. So in my history, like I had done a lot of theater improv, always with that perspective, and suddenly I got into a group that was like full comedy improv, and they did that all the time, and I was like, why does improv suddenly feel bad? And right? And later on I realized, it was that. Among other things, but it was that. And I think when you have to have a safe space, and confidence with the people that you're playing, and knowing, hey, I love you. That's why I'm gonna fuck with you.
Exactly. I remember having a conversation about this with one of my fellow players in a group that I was in. We're still very, very tight. And one of the players made a language mistake that I thought I was being sort of supportive and like incorporating it. And in retrospect, she felt like I was commenting on her bad English. So we had a conversation about it. I was mortified, obviously, because that's not what I want to do. And I also, like, in that conversation, I ended up saying to her, like, hey, feel free to, like, you can make fun of me too as well. And she's quite a bit younger than I am. And so to this day, she makes a lot of jokes about my age, about me being an old woman, which, because of our relation, because we're very comfortable with each other, that works. She can make all kinds of very, like, jokes that might be considered ageist in a different context. She can get away. Also, she's funny. Can I swear here? Am I allowed to say she's funny as fuck? What's that? Irreverente. Oh yeah, Irreverente, of course. Yeah. So her name is Rose. She's so fucking funny. And but in a different context, if somebody else were to make an ageist joke at my expense, that's not okay. So like it's with check-ins, I think it's so important to see. It's so dependent on the relationship that you have with that person, on the safety that you have with that person. And and the moment you feel icky, like you did with that, that's not. And I should hope that's not what the group wants either.
But I think even if you have confidence, in general, you have to give one of, in Spanish we say una de cal, una de arena. A little bit of I don't know how
give
you
and
say
take.
it. Give and take. Like this idea of like you make your partner look good.
Yes.
You have to make them look good a lot.
Yes.
And once in a while you can go like
that's
right. And then it works. If it's only that, but there's not the other part, then it's
and it makes me think of something like, just looping back to the things that's good for your mental health about improv. It's the positive feedback. Doing something and having your teammates go afterward, that was great. Hearing the audience laugh, the positive reinforcement is
Mm.
lovely. And necessarily, as part of improv, we get notes. Now, there's been research done into not unfortunately not in improv, but with medical students,
Mhm.
how many compliments versus criticism points
Okay.
is a good
Balance.
ratio.
Okay.
And bearing in mind, these are people who have chosen a highly critical career. It's 4-to-1, 4 compliments for 1 bit of critical feedback.
Oh,
It's hardly realistic. Like in a field where what you do is very, very important. It's a tough one. It's a tough ratio to keep. But that research for me was an eye opener in terms of how much, as you say, like
una de cal y una de arena.
Yeah, how much cal versus how much de arena.
Yeah, I don't know which one is the good one.
I don't know. My Spanish is. Yeah, so it's and I feel like the sort of more difficult a note is, the more important it is to give quality feedback.
Yeah. Do you think, going back to like a psychology perspective,
Yeah.
do you think it's something also you can train to see criticism as a good thing? Because then you said, what's the good one? What's the bad one? Is criticism the bad one? Not necessarily, right?
No.
So can you train yourself or train someone to see criticism as, hey, this helps me improve, so I'm gonna take it and sincerely thank the person giving me that, so that your ratio doesn't have to be 4-to-1. It can get to 2-to-1 or
absolutely.
something.
And I think that's again dependent on a lot of context, but dependent on the relationship that you have with that teacher. I think that yes, you can get to a point where you're genuinely happy with the feedback. I think a lot of people are genuinely happy to learn how to grow, and yet deep down there's. I don't think anybody's ever 100% going to be like, oh my God, yeah, I got some feedback on something I could have done better, because we're all love junkies. We all want to be told that we're amazing and that everything that we do is great.
But no, we're love junkies. I agree with that with you. But what if you see criticism? It's love, because you only care and give criticism to someone you love. If you don't give a fuck about them, you don't care to give them. It's a present.
That's a very interesting one, because I think I have a tendency to think that it's also dependent on how the notes are given, because I think some very skilled teachers are very good at giving very harsh criticism in a very, very loving way, and so I think that's important. And I wonder, I don't know, maybe I'm wondering whether, I'm wondering how thick your ego needs to be, how confident a person needs to be in order to genuinely 100% only receive the feedback as love. That's an interesting one. I mean, I love that question, and I need to think about that.
Okay.
Because
we'll come up on next year's podcast.
Yeah, I'm coming back to Lisbon.
All right. You said something about suddenly I have so many questions. You said about, since we're talking about feedback and confidence, I'm kind of going back to the medical training. I don't know if you probably heard about a concept called psychological safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
What's your experience with it? What can you tell us about it? And how can improv help in that?
Yeah. So psychological safety is, if I remember correctly, the definition, it's safety to learn, safe to make mistakes. And what's the third one? I forget what the third one is. Recently, I was teaching, and somebody said, added to that one that really should be the basis: safe to be, just to be accepted for who you are, how you are.
Trust. Was it something like, also the third one could be trust that the other person has your best interest in?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So safe to learn. So and the thing that immediately comes up for me with that one is that luckily improv has been changing in the past few years. Back when I started out, and was very often the only girl in the group. It was very acceptable to make jokes at the expense of women. There was a lot of sort of jokes at the expense of fat people, just anything that's not the sort of the cisgender cisgender-able-bodied white man could be a target of jokes. So you get into this rub area where people come in thinking, oh, improv, I can do anything, I can say anything, anything I say is going to be supported. And you need to teach people that actually no, not anything. There's boundary, and sometimes you need to I like to assume everybody has good intentions, so you need to give the feedback that some things actually are not welcome and shouldn't be, without making that person feel shamed, because after all, they've grown up watching film and television where that sort of joke is made, and that nobody has ever told them before, like, hey, this isn't okay.
And you can make a mistake without being a devil.
Exactly. You made a mistake. And
we tell you because we love you.
Exactly. And you're going to be judged by what you do with it rather than the fact that you did it in the first place, if that makes sense. And I feel like often we tiptoe around these things. Is it okay that I told you that you said something that's like, and that's an interesting playing field, because as teachers we have a responsibility there, as students we have a responsibility, and as a community we have a responsibility. And I feel like it's going quite well with the we're on it.
It's so it's the thing you just said reminds me of a chapter in Patty Styles' book.
Oh, shame on me, I haven't read it. So many books,
but I love it. It's
it's Patty Styles.
It's Patty Styles.
It's a great book.
But some people are great improvisers, but the book is
nice.
And she speaks about like the rules of improv, that we think are rules and how they're not helping. One of them is there's no mistakes. It's like there are mistakes. Exactly, there are mistakes, and we if we want to build psychological safety, and helping people trust that they can be free and trust their intuition, and at the same time create a safe space where that can happen. That's exactly what we want, right? And for that, there are moments where we'll have to be like, no. No. And
also because, like, in my experience of being in a scene where something happens where you're like, it's better for us to talk about it afterwards and to be told, like, no, that's not okay. Because otherwise, like, you feel it inside often, like you feel that this is, it doesn't feel good. And if afterwards you just get a like, hey, great show, it doesn't feel so good.
It's and I love the way you said to approach it, which is from love, from like not putting a label on the person or you're able. I understand you come from a good point, but you didn't realize this was not comfortable or this was not welcome or this was a mistake. So the sooner we speak about it, the sooner we go, okay, yes, good.
And a lot of people respond very positively. In my experience, some people respond defensively, but I've always learned, teaching medical students, the fact that somebody is being defensive doesn't mean that the note isn't entering them.
Absolutely.
Because of the previous thing about being right, there's a tendency, but I didn't mean it that way, or like what. Still, I'd like to give people a chance, because often, like, the note will percolate at home. Absolutely. It takes courage then to come back the next time, and the note will have been internalized.
Absolutely. It takes, very often it happens a lot, the people that the most go like, then months later, like, because this, it's like, oh, okay, it worked.
And it hurt to get the note, but it worked. And
it's great. I actually remember very well once in a scene with Ulla from Finland. It was during an Ohamana meeting, and we were doing some scene, and I went to her, like, go into the stage and do this, and she was like, maybe part of like the approaching, I went really close to her.
Yeah.
But I was telling her what to do in the scene, and she was like,
Yeah.
"Leave me alone."
Yeah.
And in the moment, it felt so bad. It's like,
Yeah.
what did I do? But then I'm like, dude, thank you
Yeah.
so much that someone said, because like, oh, okay, the same as we talked before with like reaching your limits and making a mistake.
Yeah.
I reached the limit there. It's like, oh, here it is. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. How are you supposed to know if somebody doesn't tell you? And
exactly.
how great that you were able to have that conversation that,
Yeah.
makes you understand each other better.
Amazing. We have another question.
Yes.
From being sneaky in this
Yeah.
case. It's asking if you have like a personal boundaries
Yeah.
chat in your classes,
Yeah.
and if so, any strategies to share how to make this conversation successful.
Yeah, so I do have a personal boundaries chat. I often have started it with a personal anecdote, just to make it okay.
Nice.
Because again, just based on the stuff that I've learned from being a teacher at my day job, I've learned that modeling, so sort of showing, that it's okay to talk about personal things. So I talk about just an anecdote where one time I was performing with an improviser who I didn't know very well, and he slapped me in the face on stage.
Real theater.
Anything that you like, I like seeing you respond that way, because within the cultural context that I was performing in at the time, a lot of people thought that was a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Whereas for me, without the consent of saying like, hey, I'm okay with being slapped, to me it's assault. But that's just me. So sometimes I'll tell that story, and I've learned to try and tell it in an emotionally neutral way so that people don't feel like they need to take care of me.
Yeah.
But sort of like, hey, what I learned from that is that it's important to be specific about things that are not okay with you. So because for the guy who slapped me, it was so normal. Like, it was just like something that, like, in the group where he played, it was just something that was raw and real, and whatever. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I also talk about how I don't know that it's possible to talk about all of our triggers in a check-in. I don't know. But it's possible that something comes up for you that makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And I like to give permission to just sort of say, no, thank you, or new choice, or, something. It's something in a way that, again, protects the other person from feeling like they did a bad job. If somebody brings up, dogs, and somebody's dog has just died the week before, like, that doesn't make them a bad person. But for that person, it might be a very, very sensitive subject at that moment. So just give people permission to just sort of say new choice, or no thank you is another one that I like.
I think in this case, my strategy would be to, like, first, if we don't have time to have a specific check-in on what the limits could be, assume the basic limits, and assume we're all going. We prefer to play safe, and to be sorry. In a cast where you get to know the people really deep, you can go onto those limits and understand. But if it's a cast that you just met, better, we have many other things to explore that we don't have to go to those limits in one shot.
Exactly. I think it's the Hideout Theater in Austin where the policy is, if it requires consent off stage, it requires consent on stage.
Nice.
I think that's a really nice one, and for jams, or like people where we don't know each other.
Nice.
Like, if I'm in a show with Laura Dorneweer-Verried, she's my best friend. We've been improvising together for years and years. If she hits me in a scene, that's like, I'm not going to encourage it, but it's okay. Like, it's okay if it happens. So like the context determines so much of this. And I'm glad that we've gotten away from, because years ago when I started improvising, like the yes and mantra was a little toxic at times. There was a quote, but I forget by who. It was like, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. And I, like, when I was taught improv, it was very much of the point of view of, you say, no matter what's happening, you say yes.
Yeah. That's also on Patty's book.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much.
I'm going to order it immediately after this podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, before, like, one of the first plays that I did, this is scripted theater.
Yeah.
On the script was my sister in the script.
Yeah.
Would slap me. And that was a real slap. We did the play so many times, and it was always a real slap.
Ooh, how was that for you?
Well, it was. I expected it because it was an improv.
Exactly.
And it was, it was consent.
Yeah, you had agreed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would have been so much worse and so less real without the real slap.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's a slap.
Yeah.
You don't die.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
But yeah. Wow.
No, and some people, like, again, some people like being slapped on stage. Like I spoke to improvisers. Exactly. Hey, but yeah, so if you want to slap the shit out of each other, go nuts.
Yeah.
But it's yeah.
So I said, like, to me, there's two strategies.
Yeah.
One is assuming the basic what you said. Well,
Yeah.
I want to go back to the phrase.
Yeah.
If it requires consent out of stage, it requires.
Yeah.
So
it's a good one, right?
Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
Yeah. It's
the other one would be, I'm just like. No, I was gonna tell you. And
you were gonna tell me. Okay.
Yes. If. No, I just forgot.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's the thing with the life.
It'll come back to you.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have this anecdote.
Yes.
In the Leuven Festival.
Yeah.
In Belgium.
Yeah.
Years ago, I don't remember when. They had this thing about, like, go on stage and say something about it. And I remember going. That's like, I think improvisers are better people than non-improvisers.
How did that go?
Someone came right after and said, like, I don't agree with that shit.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think, as a psychologist,
Yeah.
I'm asking you as a psychologist, not as an improviser, do you think improvisers? I'm going to put it in a less generic way, so that it's not just. Do you think that the skills and the attitudes that people that regularly train improv, the skills and those attitudes that they develop, make them better friends, better citizens, better partners, better workers?
So yeah, this is an interesting one because I'm a psychologist and also an improviser. So by definition, I think I love Tina Fey's quote about improv, and it's I'm going to be paraphrasing, but it's something about, like, improv gets compared to a cult, and sometimes when you see somebody walk past a room where we're all going bunny, 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 like, you can understand that.
Sorry.
And she says, but improv has taught me a mindset that helps me be open to new experiences. It set me on a path to have a very interesting career. It's where I met my husband. What has your cult done for you lately? And I love that. So, I mean, I've chosen improv as a sort of side career next to psychology. So it would be weird if I thought that, like, improv, I wouldn't say that, like, I don't know that it makes us this is very culty. I'm not sure that it makes us better. I do feel like we are so lucky. We're so lucky to have found this art form where you do end up being open to new experiences, where you do, like, as I said before, the yes and mentality can be toxic if taken too far, but within limits. For me, at least, I don't know what it's like for you, but it has helped me say yes to things that I wouldn't have said yes to otherwise.
Absolutely.
And like, I got on a plane on a whim to Texas to go and hang out with this guy that I'd met at a festival. And and now I get to live with the love of my life in Amsterdam. Like, that's amazing. That's living the dream. So I feel like, yes, improvisers are really good listeners. Like, I've had the experience of doing escape rooms, both with people at my day job and with improvisers. What happens when you do it with people in the medical field is, somebody will find this thing in the escape room and go, maybe this is a clue. And while somebody else is going, but maybe that is a clue. And a third person is over there going, no, guys, everybody come here. This is a clue. With the improvisers, one person will say, this might be a clue. And everybody dives on it and tries to figure that one out. So much more listening and support. And so I feel like that makes us very lucky to have found this thing and found a thing where I've learned to be okay with failing. I've learned to a certain degree overcome imposter phenomenon. So yeah, better. I can see how that would be a controversial thing to say. I love that you went there.
I went
there. You said yes to saying that. I love it. Yeah, I think it makes us very, very lucky.
Okay.
And there's a Dutch word that there's no translation in English, but it's gunnen, which means to want something for somebody else. I gun everybody. I want for everybody that they get to take an improv class with a good teacher to see where it might take them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's actually my next question.
Yes.
Very often you will have heard the same as me 100 times when someone sees a show or hears that you're an improviser or that you want to improv, they say like, I wouldn't be able to.
Yes.
Or that's not for me.
Yeah.
Or I'm not funny. Or I'm not so fast.
Yeah. Good. Don't be funny. Okay. Don't be fast. So yeah, when people say that to me, like I could never do that, I always tell them, like, respectfully, bestie, you are wrong. Like you could. Maybe you don't want to, and that's fine. But anybody can improvise. Yeah. Anybody can improvise to a certain degree. I used to teach sort of applied improv to two specific groups. I taught improv to children with autism as a way of teaching them like social skills and interaction, and just a way of making.
I think.
And we're back.
Hey.
Yeah. I taught improv to people with aphasia, and in case people watching don't know what that is,
I don't know.
You don't know what it is. Yeah,
so I've heard about it, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
I know what it is.
It's an umbrella term for different types of disorders where speech, like language production, gets unregulated. So there's like on one extreme, there's a type of aphasia where people will like name things by the wrong thing. They'll be like, I'm just going to take a sip from my car, use the wrong word, and some people will just like forget words. And
I have that too.
Yeah, probably not. It's probably doesn't like, but yeah. So just forgetting words to the point where you aren't are less able to express yourself.
Yeah. You taught improv to that.
Yes.
People with that. Yeah. As a way to help them.
Yeah. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Which was really fun. Like there was one guy in my class who had such advanced aphasia that he there was only one word that he could say, and that was godverdomme, the Dutch word for God damn it.
Oh.
And so how we used that in scenes was that he would just any line that he said was godverdomme, but he would say it with different intonations.
Oh, nice.
And there was another guy who couldn't speak at all, but turned out to be really good at making animal noises. So he played an animal in every scene, and it was really nice to have ways of like expressing yourself that like.
And they probably loved it, no? That like, my skill is appreciated.
Yeah, it was really fun because there's a frustration, obviously, with not being able to express yourself. Like I can't even begin to imagine.
But they understand everything. If you tell them, let's do a scene, and
I think so. Okay. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but I think I understand everything. Yeah.
So cool. So cool. You're so lucky that you get to do those things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're so
honestly, we're truly blessed that this is a thing that's
coming back to the thing that the controversial thing that I said about like better people.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that you put it like we're very lucky. It's to me, yes, it's a path of personal development.
Yeah.
So if you go on that path and you make efforts, you will become better.
Yeah.
Better not than anyone else, better than your former self.
Yes,
Which
better than
if
you
you-
would have been. Yes.
Which if you didn't, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But to me, the risk of that is because you see you're evolving,
Yeah.
and maybe you see other people are not in that path
Yeah.
to become arrogant,
Yes.
to become impatient
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
look at them, they're not on the path, or look
Yeah.
at it,
Yeah.
they're in a different moment of development.
Yeah.
Meh.
Yeah.
So seeing it from the perspective of I'm so lucky
Yeah.
that I got the resources, the time, the consciousness, the support,
Yes.
so that I was able to go on this path, helps you bring back this patience and this
Yeah.
understanding of like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Not everyone's in the same path of development. And
Exactly. And somebody who's on a slower path, like what can you learn from your interaction with that person? Whether it's, they still have plenty of wisdom to share, on the stage and off stage.
Yeah.
And in terms of how can I be a supportive enough improviser to help that person on their path?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that it's your job to support everything. Again, like watch out for the toxic yes and for the
Mhm.
toxic support.
Yeah.
But
Maybe we need to make we want to make a clarification about when we speak about the yes and the toxic yes and.
yes.
For people that don't have so many references, maybe
Yes, sure.
we better clarify. My understanding of it is like a lot of people say that one of the first rules of improv is yes and,
Yes.
right? And I really enjoyed reading on Patty's book
Yeah.
how no, that's not a rule.
No.
It's not that we have to say yes and,
Yeah.
is that we want to build together, that we want to
Yeah.
acknowledge what happens
Yeah.
and contribute to it.
Yeah.
If what happens doesn't make us feel uncomfortable, we still want to build, but we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah, exactly.
So to me, yes and is too short, too simplistic, and it leaves room for those type of toxicities like
Just
just
to say yes.
yeah. And it also not necessarily because the Patty explains this in her book really well. It's like those rules were created by people trying to like get a quick recipe or like
Simple.
like help in walking when you're starting, and at some point that help is just dragging you because you better walk without a third thing. And in this case it's exactly that. At the beginning we're so used in our society to say no, to protect ourselves, to just stay in the safe space, that you need a little bit of a push to explore. We are safe, so go explore.
It's a shortcut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at some point that shortcut will not let you explore and be inspired.
Oh, well put. Yeah, you can write a book too now.
Her book is enough. Actually, many times reading about it, I was like, I want to propose her to translate this Spanish because everyone there has to read this shit.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's
It's a lot of work.
But yeah. It's 53. Are we good? One last question. Do we have anything? From our huge audience in this.
There's a laptop being brought over. Kiki just said that you slap her and that would be okay.
Okay, we have a message from Laura.
Laura, my love, you can slap me whenever you want. It would be okay. I trust you.
Yeah, people. This thing with people in stand-up comedy say we only roast the people that we love.
Yes. Oh, that's
Right?
pretty. Yeah, I love
They
that.
have this concept of the roast.
Yeah.
In stand-up comedy, which like they take a person and they just like hate them and mess with them as much as they can, and they say that like they only roast the people that they love.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful concept.
Yes, if the person wants to be roasted. Like I know people who love to be roasted.
Yeah.
And if that's your love language, go nuts.
Yeah. I have one last question.
Yes.
Because I want to use all the time.
Yeah.
I once tried to teach a workshop on trust.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about roasting and trust and confidence.
Yeah.
Any tip as a psychologist that you would have to build trust among maybe not necessarily a group that already exists, but like how do they trust in a workshop? For people that want to, that have, the people that are on the sides and like can trust themselves to go, or the people that are in the stage and not trust their partners that they will come and help.
Oh, that kind of trust. Okay, not interpersonal trust, but more like trusting your.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
As a psychologist,
Yeah.
is it related self-confidence and trust? Because it's trust in you or other people.
I'd say there's a Venn diagram, but there's some overlap, but I think it's two different
things.
So trust between people happens when your actions line up with your words. So for interpersonal trust, I would say anything where you're checking in with the other person. Like I don't know, I remember taking a workshop with Rama Nicholas where it was like, you'd say, can I touch your cheek? And then the person checks in with themselves and says either yes or no. And if it's a no, they'll say like, no, but you could put your hand on my shoulder, or something like that. And I thought that was such a great trust building exercise, because it teaches you that it's okay to say no, it's okay to give alternatives. And you're learning the experience that like what you say is going to be respected by the other person
and appreciated.
I've
done similar exercises, and when the other person says no, you say thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it takes courage to say no.
Exactly. So so for trust, and I'm also trying to think about what it is Brene Brown said about trust, with like when you do something in support of other people, you sort of earn points with them. And and some things are big point earners. Being there for somebody when they're going through something, or that can be a big point earner, and that's a thing that can build trust off stage that will translate to the on stage. I was using Laura as an example before, like, we've been there for each other through thick and thin, so the resulting trust on stage is that. And trusting yourself, the self-confidence thing, to a certain degree can be supported by other people, by people celebrating your, celebrating your the things that you've done great, and giving you the feedback with love that we were talking about. That would be
okay.
That would be a way of helping support that trust on the other person. But you can build the trust in yourself. There's all kinds of evidence for writing down 3 things that went well on a particular day or after a particular show. Write down not only 3 things that went well, but what is it about you that made those things go well? So not like that scene was really fun, but what is it about you as an improviser that made it that, like, is that because you listened really hard? Is that because you picked up on nonverbal skills nonverbal communication that your partner was? So that sort of thing. So what you end up having then is like a list of things that in your gut that you are good at.
Love it.
Yeah, it's cool,
and you can apply that in normal life.
You can apply that. Yeah, exactly.
Like, the shopping went well because I was attentive to whatever.
Exactly.
Oh, practical
tips with Alfonso and Pete.
So cool. Great takeaway from this conversation. Also, Brené Brown, if you're interested in trust and all these things, beautiful.
It's my second favorite Texan.
Oh,
say I know there's so many great Texans.
Third.
I'm not going to try and rank Texans here.
Let's go, Kevin. Stay with me. What about you and Beyonce? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for being with us today. It was a lovely conversation. I loved it. And I hope that people are watching loved it too. The people that will be able to watch this. So if you're watching this and you loved it, tell to the people in the YouTube of Irreverente Impro Festival this will be on. And I hope a lot of people will enjoy it.
I hope so.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you also to the Irreverente Impro Festival for having us. And if you're around Lisbon, see you at the show stage.